He hunted us up, and he's been with us ever since. This is Bobby Bailey. She owns a company in Atlanta. It's called Our Way, Your Way, My Way, Our Way. And she made a lot of the engineering on the compressor, on the meltdown generator.
This is kind of your typical happy campers photograph. In the front's Lou Sapienza. He was our cook. And behind him is Neil, right here, in one of his more pensive moods, I guess. And
here's Neil's brother Tom, and a couple more, George Wall, Gordon Scott. And we're big time. I mean, contrast this with that 1981 single tent.
Okay, so then we're out looking for the airplanes. We find them on radar. Radar tells us that they are 80 meters deep. 80 meters deep. It's just incomprehensible to us.
But 80 meters sounds better than 260 feet.
I'm going to start using 80 meters now. 25 stories deep these airplanes are. And at that point, it becomes patently impossible for a couple of guys from Georgia, or almost anybody, to go into a glacier and do something that just hasn't been done before, and you don't know what you're going to get when you get there. So, but nonetheless, you know, the old man, Norman Vaughan, he gave us a lecture on one of the expeditions where we had failed, and we failed in a lot of them. And he said, you haven't really failed. You haven't failed until you quit. And somehow that just triggers something in your mind like, hey, if I don't quit, I've never failed. And then we were up there succeeding, even though we came back with nothing, because we'd go back again. And
all you got to do is go back.
Yeah. And he said, Richard, we're not quitting, are we? I said, no, sir. We're going to keep on going. So anyway, here they are, 250 feet deep. We should quit. We don't know how. Norman Vaughan's told us.
The Icelanders located airplanes electronically, and they lay out the flags. And how do you know they located them? Because you got nothing. And you look at the position of the flags, you look at that 1942 photograph, and everything lines up. Even though they're 2 miles from where they landed in 42, you think that that's right. So now you got to drill down to them. And here we are in 1989 with our plumb bob.
Yeah. This is a very simple apparatus. We turned the nose cone there out of a block of aluminum, drilled some holes in it, hooked it onto an 8-foot thick-walled steel pipe, hook a 300-foot hose to it, pump hot water out the nose, and it comes out as a spray nozzle. Just point it down like a plumb bob, and take the hose over your shoulder, and it'll melt a hole going straight on down. And then you go down 300 feet, and if you've missed it, get Neil to pull the hose out. You go on over there.
Neil, pull the hose.
And all you got is, I pulled the last one. I'm not going to do it.
All you got to do is miss a half an inch, and you missed.
And you have no idea.
So you move over 3 feet, and you do it again. And maybe it takes 8 or 15 times at about 30 minutes each time to drill this hole. And finally,
you get it. Okay, so
250 feet.
That gives you a hole going down to an airplane. This is my slide right here, because you've all been in partnerships where one of the partners' back is bent, who's doing all of the work, who's
you can tell the good guys wear white boots.
And the other partner is thinking lofty thoughts, and you know, it takes both of those kinds of guys to get something done. Okay, so then we go down there, we have a hole going down to the airplane, and we want to come up with something tangible, because perhaps it was a frozen behemoth that was down there.
A what?
Behemoth.
You used a big word on me this afternoon.
Well, yeah, well, I went over to the Museum of Natural History, and I saw these behemoths.
Oh.
So we went down there, and we needed to come up with something tangible. Our rights of search and salvage were granted by the Danish government. And they required us to continue the rights to have tangible evidence of the airplanes. They were getting skeptical. So we have to then drill something, come up with metal. But you can't just send a drill through the ice, because it will, even through the hole, because it'll chafe the walls of that hole, and you can't get, so we have to sleeve that hole. And here we're using regular old plumbing pipe down here that you get at the hardware store in Atlanta. We threaded the couplings.
10-foot sections, and you put a little holder there.
Right.
This gadget right here, there's a little handlebars, a hole drilled through the rod, and there's another one up there, and you take this bottom one loose, and you better have one up at the top.
So you have two of them. Okay, so then we're putting together electrical conduit, 3/4-inch aluminum conduit that goes down inside that plastic pipe. And on the end of that conduit is a radial drill, the kind you mortise out lock sets in a door. And so we now have a 25-story high hand drill. And we turn it by hand. And it works.
And it really did. That's the way it was. And what do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt. No, you get a piece of, look at that, center punched, a piece of 1/2-inch aluminum tubing. And the keyhole saw cut it.
What kind of tubing was that?
Aluminum.
Yeah. Okay, so then we had tangible evidence that made us a success. We knew for sure that it was not a behemoth, it was something metal. And then here's where...
That was back in 89. 89 was the first time we had tangible evidence that there was a show-enough airplane down there. Because we brought up that piece of tubing, then we brought up a piece of olive drab paint, and they didn't paint the beer cans olive drab in 1942. And so anyway, we had tangible evidence. Again, you write a letter to Don, you say, Mr. Lopez, need a little bit more help.
And I guess this is where Don got John Ware to help us. We had 5 flights of C-130s that brought in 75,000 pounds of equipment. I mean, this is now big time. It's gone a long way from that first expedition.
Good Lockheed Georgia-built airplane.
Yeah. We tried to get them, see the J-TO bottles on the side? We tried to get them to fire those to give us a demonstration. We told them we'd take them down the hole and show them the airplane, but they wouldn't budge. Oh, do you remember the pilot of this one? What was her name?
Oh, she was good looking. Yeah, no.
She was great. All right, now you talk about a funny-looking airplane. What kind of airplane's that? Dornier.
Was it 228?
2.8.
Anyway, we graduated from a single-engine 185 to DC-3s and C-130s and the Dornier. And the Dornier and the DC-3 was what we used in 92.
For you pilots, this Dornier is like it was a cast airplane. It's as solid as and it climbs at 70 miles an hour, goes level at 70 miles an hour, approaches at 70 miles an hour, but it'll do anything at 70 miles an hour. It'll even fly into the ice cap.
And one time it bounced off the snow, too. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so this is 1990. We have 2 operations going simultaneously. One hole we're drilling down for the bomber, and another one we're going to melt a small hole 3 feet in diameter. We're going to melt down. So because when you go to Greenland, if you don't have backups, you go up there and you waste a whole expedition. This is the coring operation, and this apparatus is a silo unloader. It's the gadget you put in a silo. It's got a horizontal helical screw, an Archimedes screw that pulls everything into the center and then blows it out. And so they're going to start taking this, coring this huge hole down into the glacier. And simultaneously we're melting it over at the bomber.
This Angelo Pizzagalli Construction up in Burlington, Vermont, he financed and brought along all of that equipment.
He thought we were going to the jungle, though. Okay.
He got down 120 feet, and in 1990 they had a warm summer, and the water came in, and it stopped the operation.
But this is down 120 feet, looking up at the blue shed at the top. It was an incredible hole that went that deep, and as I told you, the snow would melt down 20, 25 feet. Where does the water go? Well, if you drill a hole down there, it's just like drilling a hole in the bottom of the Potomac River. Okay, so then the coring did not work, but melting down does. And that lady we saw, Bobby Bailey, she manufactured this device for us, which is a thermal meltdown generator. And it is a helical coil of copper tubing, and inside, and it's about 1 meter in diameter. Inside there's a 13-stage deep well pump. So as we lower it, it will melt into the glacier. We pump the water out, leaving us a dry hole 1 meter in diameter down to the plane.
Pumping the hot water in, just like a burner on the stove.
Yeah. And the coils at the top, we were concerned about melting a hole in and then the pressure of the glacier squeezing the hole closed. We would not be able to pull it back out, and we wanted to be able to melt our way back out.
It was known as a thermal meltdown generator until the first year we used it, and it went down through the soft snow, and then it hit the hard snow and went horizontal. Ever after, it was called a gopher. So there's our gopher, and to solve that problem, that pipe that we put down as a guide pipe, we cut a nose in the front of the gopher, and it would follow the guide pipe the 250 feet down to the airplane.
And this is what it looks like going down this is down about 70 or 80 feet, where you go from the compacted snow range into what's called the fern line. And there, the glacier no longer absorbs any water. It is blue ice. And it is absolutely the most beautiful thing you've ever seen in your life. It is just, we have 400...
You don't get out much.
You're right.
It was pretty. It was
spectacular. It's absolutely spectacular because the bright lights will shine into the glacier 10 or 15 feet, and it has this aquamarine glow to it. And you're out of the wind and the harshness of the atmosphere in Greenland, and you're down there secure in the glacier that's just sparkling and pristine. It's truly spectacular.
You get to the bottom, and you find in 1942 they got all but one out. And this guy was there. And as you put the hot water on his face, he began to smile. Down here, if you'll see... And
he says, did we win the war?
I told you about Phyllis Arlene. Well, the gunner had his girlfriend's name here on the side, Marion. And, but if you looked over on the other side, it said Dorothy.
Okay, so here's the nose shot of the P-38. And after you get down to the plane, you take a hot water hose and start melting out a cavity around the plane. The temperature of the ice is right at freezing, so it melts very quickly. And we've left
it's very quickly if you're on the top and not doing the melting.
Yeah, and we've left this shaft of ice between the booms so that the roof doesn't fall down. And it didn't. But here we're looking at the 4 50 caliber machine guns and the 20 millimeter cannon, all of which were operational. There was lots of ammunition in the plane. We fired the cannon on the 4th of July and put out a 55-gallon drum and then plinked it. It was like shooting beer cans with a .22. It just goes. The 50 calibers would go right through it and the can would hardly shake, but that cannon really works.
That's where we drill the hole down through it and then enlarge a hole, standing on the left wing, looking across. Neil's in the cockpit.
Pretending he's a pilot. And there's the cowling is open on the nose of the plane, and you can see the ammunition tracks all coming in. Everything is in very good shape.
Like I said, on the 4th of July, we shot the 50 caliber, and on the 50th anniversary of the 20 millimeter cannon. Go ahead. Through the 20 millimeter cannon. Go ahead.
And then here's the bailout bottle. This fellow's must have been flying high. And that was just so that when you jump out at 30,000 feet, you got to have enough juice to get you down to where your chute's going to open. And some of the graffiti that was left on the inside of the airplane. A whole plane cannot come out of a 1 meter diameter hole. So after you've done one hole, you move the gopher over and start a second and a third. And here we have 3 holes on the bottom side and 1 or 2 at the top, and then we put a guy in between because the summer window in Greenland's short. You've got to get a lot of work done quickly. And he's in the middle, chipping it off and just letting the snow fall down in the hole where it'll melt and we can pump it back out. In 1990, we left a Bobcat up there that the C-130s brought in. And in 92, 2 years later, it's at the bottom. It's down under 30 feet of snow. And the only way to get it out is by hand. And here we can see the fellows down in the hole, and you get down, you shovel it up to the next layer, that guy shovels it to the next, that guy shovels it out.
It's 33 feet in 2 years.
Yeah.
It's Roy Schaffner, who was invested in the 1992 expedition. He's rebuilding the airplane in Middlesboro, Kentucky. The engine has come out. It came out vertically, now we've swung it horizontally and pulling it on out.
This is a very important slide, not because it shows in what good shape the engine is, but it shows EPS working. There's one of the booms coming out, And there's the Bobcat. I mean, it was no small piece of equipment. And inside the plane, I guess they had some slack between shifts, and there was a number of places where they would have graffiti and old World War II slogans. Here, we're mounting the .50 caliber machine gun on our armed attack snowmobile.
There's Bob Carden, Tony. Remember the 24-year-old standing by his upside-down airplane? It's Brad McManus. There he is.
50 years to the day. And then the fellow in the middle who's reading, he was part of the rescue team. We took these fellows up on the ice cap to have a ceremony on July the 15th, on the 50th anniversary.
50th anniversary, and
then the plane, as the whole would get larger, we would take larger and larger pieces out of the glacier. The center section was the last piece to come up, and it spanned from one engine nacelle to the other engine nacelle with the pod in between, and it was too big to put in the DC-3, and it wouldn't fit in a C-130. So we chartered a helicopter, wrapped up the cockpit, and had a helicopter come pick it up, and there you can see it slung beneath the helicopter, and it gives you a notion of what the shoreline and the coastline of Greenland is about at this area. And then there are the real heroes that are sitting over here. And really, there's a lot to be said about that. And we can joke about it and all, but the true sacrifices that have been made in an adventure like this are really the ones that are made at home. And I know Pat and I just can't say thank you enough to the support that we've gotten there. We're at the end of this thing, but I want to end it with a thought that T.E. Lawrence wrote. T.E. Lawrence, most of you know, was Lawrence of Arabia. In 1936, he wrote a book called The 7 Pillars of Wisdom. And in that book, he said, "All men dream, but not equally. Those who dream at night in the dusty recesses of their mind wake to find that it was but vanity. The dangerous ones are those who dream by the light of day with their eyes wide open, for they will make it happen." And I think there's a bunch of dreamers in our group here, and including the wives, that have made an incredible thing happen. The airplane will be flying in a year. It's being rebuilt in Middlesboro, Kentucky, and that will be the end of 14 years of what you've seen here, starting out and going up in a little Cessna to Greenland, to having a perfectly museum-quality, flying, original P-38. That's it.
Thank you both. That was not only one of the most interesting, but one of the most entertaining talks we've had here. And they won't be able to stay too long because they have a gig at a comedy club later. We can take some questions now, from anybody who would like to ask any. Is the purpose just to bring up one airplane, no more?
we out of money and out of time. No, there are 5 still there, and a B-17 that's never been brought out or looked at.
The B-17, when we got to it, it was in very bad shape. It was just shredded. And for some reason I can't explain, maybe it's you never quit sort of thing, we went back thinking the P-38 was lighter and smaller and stronger, and it turned out to be in good shape. The other planes are perfect. And we haven't seen them yet, but but I have every confidence. I'm sure they're perfect.
Right here.
They get better.
Having followed some of the recovery in flying magazines and AOPA magazines, I understand that there was significant damage due to the weight of the ice and it was somewhat crushed. Is that...
The B-17.
Was the B-17 somewhat crushed by the weight of the ice and the P-38?
Well, you saw it.
Yes, it was damaged extensively. But when we went to Oshkosh in '92 and we took half of the airplane there, and you see Rudy Frasca and Kermit Weeks and Bill Hansen, they said they built P-40s and Spitfires and all of those They said, this is in much better shape than what we started with. So you think you've got something, but it's going to take a lot of money to rebuild it.